It's hard to believe there's less than 3 weeks until the Japanese release of Hyrule Warriors, and it's becoming obvious that it is so close thanks to the complete deluge of new information that's come out. Magazines, trailers, and even a live stream on NicoNico have yielded a ton of details to how the game will play and what kind of features we could see. And that's not even counting all of the nods and cameos to the main Zelda games. So it's time to break out the old analysis machine and tally up all of the secrets and hidden details that are hiding in all of this material. Of course, be sure to watch our previous analyses as we'll only be covering the new stuff here. With that said, let's get started. The trailer proper begins with Link taking on the enemies of Hyrule Field in his trainee outfit rather than his traditional tunic. And that's because we finally know that that's how he begins. After the opening cutscene, he presumably rushes out into the field in order to fight the oncoming threat. And thanks to the NicoNico stream, we have a pretty good idea of how that's exactly going to happen. We apologize for the low quality of the stream footage, but it's all we have available. The stream shows Link in his traditional outfit, but this is obviously a return visit thanks to the large amount of health he has. Soon after fighting some enemies, a fairy appears and begins speaking with Link. We already knew he had this ability thanks to his bio, but this is the first time we've seen it in action. What's strange is that at first it seems like there are 2 fairies, especially since the background color changes in its portrait as well as the name changing. However, what's more likely is that the fairy only has a generic name before introducing itself properly and joining Link, and thanks to a translation we know this fairy's name to be Proxy. Fitting since it'll be speaking on Link's behalf, even appearing with him in his portrait. Link continues to fight his way through the hordes of enemies, but a new detail has been added since the E3 demo. Defeated enemies immediately turn gray. This means that any further damage is meaningless and combos can be directed at the ones that are still active. It's a nice visual hint so the player can maximize their moveset. The stream also gave us a clearer look at Valga's dragon transformation. We saw a little of it during the trailer, but here we see him flying in quite clearly. And it's now pretty much confirmed that Valga is at the very least inspired by Volvagia, if not actually being the dragon itself. The only real difference in the design is the wings it now has, though its head and body are just the same. Link also has a short fight with Valga where we can see that Valga can also hurt his own allies, something that the player cannot do to the Hylian soldiers. After taking half of his health away, a scene plays where Valga demonstrates he can transform small portions of his body at a time. He rushes Link, who is saved by Impa, but Valga performs another attack where Link rescues Impa. This act shows that Link possesses the Triforce of Courage. It's the same scene we've seen in the past, except fully fleshed out. What's interesting though is that Link remains in his tunic here rather than reverting back to his trainee uniform. So it looks like the cutscenes will use the in-game engine, at least to a point, but we'll elaborate on that later. From there, the stage follows the E3 demo with Link grabbing some bombs from a chest and using them to blow up rocks. However, another visual upgrade from that demo is how much more quickly the rubble disappears. It barely sticks around at all. There's also a chest beneath the conspicuous nearby rock that wasn't there before. We even get a little taste of the other items thanks to the new item selection screen. It somewhat resembles the one from Skyward Sword, but we believe that the gamepad is used in this case. We already know from the demo that items and sub-weapons can be scrolled through with the D-pad, but this option allows players to choose what they want right away. It also gives us our first look at the boomerang in action. There's not much to say about it from the stream alone, but thanks to the translations of the recent Famitsu scans by the website Nintendo Everything, we know a bit more about how it works. Like the bombs and the hookshot, the boomerang is found in a treasure chest. Its main use is that when it strikes an enemy, it will be frozen in place for a short time, just like in the main games. However, just as a bomb can be strengthened for a bigger blast thanks to an enemy drop, the boomerang can too. In its case, it becomes the Gale Boomerang, which creates a tornado that makes enemies float. Even better is that if the boomerang hits any enemy while they're in midair, they will take more damage. And while we haven't seen it in action yet, we did learn exactly how the bow will work. Normally it only fires a single arrow that does a small amount of damage, though it is possible to take down stronger enemies by just standing back and shooting. However, when it is powered up by an enemy drop, the bow becomes the light bow and can shoot 5 light arrows in a spread, which is what we saw in one of the screenshots before. But what about the strengthened hookshot? Well, during the part of the features trailer that shows off the 2-player mode, it's possible to watch Zelda pull down the moon from Majora's Mask with her hookshot. Could this possibly be what the hookshot does when it's powered up from an enemy drop like the bow? Moving on from there, we see Link hunt down another fairy fountain containing the Great Fairy. As he reaches it though, we get to see a neat little Easter egg. The checkpoint symbol closely resembles the weather vanes from A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. So far, it's the first reference we've seen to those games. But as Link summons the Great Fairy, we see the same animation from the Treehouse's Midna demo. Except this time, the Great Fairy collects all of the bombs on the battlefield before combining them together for a massive one that she drops on enemy forces. Based on this, we believe that using the Great Fairy in each level will power up one of your sub-weapons. For the hook shot, it was dragging down the moon from Majora's Mask, and we've seen the one for the bombs, so it seems like the item you find in that stage is the one that gets powered up. But then the features trailer throws us a curveball by showing the Great Fairy appearing in the middle of battle. Slowing down the footage, we can see that she's twirling a bottle around herself, and in an incredibly humorous twist, it's Link who's inside. As the bottle lands on the ground, Link appears full size again before the Great Fairy dive bombs the enemies. So could this be the Great Fairy powering up a fairy bottle item? It seems strange because this all takes place in Hyrule Field, which, as we've seen, is where she powers up the bomb. So could this animation work in the same way as the Gale Boomerang, or could there be multiple ways to activate the Great Fairy? Just like the E3 demo, the fight continues until you confront the Dodongo. However, after it arrives, a symbol appears on the map indicating that a gold Skulltula has appeared. According to the translations, they appear if certain special conditions are met, but what was the condition here? Since it's just the first level, does that mean you only have to reach Dodongo and then go kill the Skulltula? Beyond this case, we do know a lot more about the gold Skulltulas, such as there being 100 of them to find in the game. For each one you kill, you get an illustration from the game, but players won't be searching blindly for them as the stage select screen will have more information on them. The appearance of some of these gold Skulltulas can actually be related to which weapon and character is being used in some cases. And once the conditions are met, players will only have a short time to find and kill it before it disappears. As you get closer though, the familiar rustling sound can be heard. And while the gold Skulltula in the stream was out in the open, some can be more hidden, such as under the large boulders. It's another example of how exploration is being added to the Dynasty Warriors formula. Finishing off the Link portion of the stream, completing the stage shows Impa awarding Link with his green tunic and scarf, meaning that his efforts in this first battle and saving her is what allows him to lead his fellow soldiers. Of course, the effect of it all is lessened somewhat by the fact that Link is already wearing those clothes. That's not the end of the scene either, as some story info starts being relayed about the importance of the Triforce, but the stream skips by it before anything notable can be said. Returning to the features trailer, we soon see Link use his gauntlet weapon to swing around a massive pillar. But did you notice that he's actually fighting the Gorons? It seems like they might get mind controlled at one point, just like Midna. And Link seems to be pulling his punches too, somehow, as rupees are appearing without any of the Gorons dying. But it's during Impa's portion of the trailer where she's fighting in the Faron Woods that we see something truly new. For one, the entire stage. According to the Famitsu article, the Faron Woods is a completely original area even though it has some familiar elements. The biggest one by far is the presence of the Great Deku Tree. He actually acts as the centerpiece of the forest and is even bigger than his Ocarina of Time counterpart. Once again, he's the guardian deity, and the people that live here have created a village amongst the forest and caves. This is also where one of the confrontations with Wizrow takes place, which is much freakier than we first imagined, as we see that Wizrow's eye can actually become a mouth. His attacks look to involve summoning purple monsters for closer attacks and unleashing a beam of dark energy for long-range ones. Though it's not in the trailer, screenshots reveal another of Impa's weapons, a halberd that possesses a fire element. With it, she can attack enemies with giant blades as well as create walls of fire to crush them. The scans even state that she can make a dragon of flames to plow through enemies. Soon afterward, we see the first confrontation with Sia and one of her powers. It's nothing too grand, but we can see her launch energy balls from her staff. What's odd though is that it seems to decimate some kind of shield around Lana. Could that attack break through defenses? And speaking of Lana, her new weapon, the Deku Staff, was shown off during the NicoNico stream. Depending on what combos and finishers were used, the Deku Staff could transform into a multitude of Deku weaponry, as well as some water-based attacks. The first thing it transformed into was a giant version of the Slingshot, which could shoot Deku Nuts into crowds of enemies. Another combo turned it into the Deku Leaf from Wind Waker, which both blew enemies away as well as allowed Lana to glide through the air for a short time. The Deku Staff can plant seeds which eventually grow into trees, and even summon the Deku Sprout to bounce amongst the enemies for some damage. But one of the coolest attacks was her special, which would grow a miniature version of the Great Deku Tree in the middle of her opponents. Even her dodge has a reference to the Deku items, as the staff transforms into the Deku Shield to protect her back. And speaking of Deku related things, a new enemy was shown off, the Deku Baba. Though not especially strong, it creates a poison circle around itself constantly. Getting caught in there can do some major damage, so actually defeating it requires long-range attacks. Then there's the scene that plays toward the end of this playthrough in the stream, the cutscene where Lana rescues Agatha. However, she's no longer using the Deku Staff but her Book of Sorcery. We saw that Link's costume didn't change during the cutscene, but maybe since she uses that specific attack, she has to be shown using the book. It's an interesting change that indicates that cutscenes may only partially be in real time. Next up is Sheik, who uses a harp as her first weapon. We can see from the trailer that one of her special attacks involves creating a circle of harps that blasts enemies back and forth if they're caught within. She also uses the kunai on her to perform multi-hit attacks and even make them rain on enemies from the sky. According to the translated scans, Sheik likes to toy with enemies thanks to her ninja-like movement. The harp actually allows her to play melodies that assign various elements to her attacks. For example, with the fire elemental, she can drop flaming boulders on the field. As far as her role in the story, Sheik appears before Link and the others to suggest an alliance and constantly speaks in mysterious ways that hint at the future. We also get our first look at the Death Mountain stage, which includes the Goron City. And who better to fight in this stage than Darunia wielding the Megaton Hammer? According to the translation, he has superhuman strength as demonstrated by how he can use the hammer with ease. He's also able to roll up into a ball for a rolling attack. While in the ball, players can hit the attack button to keep Darunia rolling. Amazingly, he is about the same speed as Link. The magazine was able to play as Darunia in the Elden Volcano level where they revealed one of the unique missions it involves. The stage includes a section where bomb chews are constantly spawning. The player can't interact with them though, as they automatically travel to their destination, but the enemies are constantly blocking their path, so it's up to the player to clear the way so the bomb chews can unlock the way forward. The magazine also talks about how Darunia uses a little dance to celebrate the completion of a level. We actually see this dance in the trailer, which means that all of the introduction poses we've seen so far in the character trailers are those characters' victory celebrations. It's another cool detail that can be full of references to other Zelda games, like Ruto's. Thanks to her character trailer, we see her carried around just like she was as a kid in Ocarina of Time. It shows that Hyrule Warriors isn't scared to get a little silly. But Ruto looks to be an excellent fighter. In the Features trailer, the banner naming each character also shows the weapon they're using. In Ruto's case, it looks to be a kind of jeweled bangle, though thanks to the translations we know it's called the Zora Scale. You can even see her wearing it at one point. The Zora Scale seems to allow Ruto to create water wherever she desires and even treat the land as just another pool. We can see this best during the NicoNico stream where they demoed Ruto on the Skyloft map. She is able to create exploding puddles, water waves, and even multiple balls of water that slam into surrounding enemies. She also uses the puddles to jump around the field, juggling enemies all the while. Then there are the water walls that look as if they can be aimed, as well as creating a giant water dome that traps enemies while Ruto just decimates them. She looks to be a very fast and elegant fighter, and this is demonstrated by her running animation, which actually has her swimming, as it were, through the air. But this portion of the stream also provided some other interesting details. For one, it seems like the way to travel from island to island is to fulfill certain conditions. Once those are met, Levias will actually push a loose piece of floating rock into place so you can cross. Then there's the cutscene that takes place. Despite playing as Ruto, it's Link that has the encounter with Fi. We've already noted how Link's clothes stayed the same in the cutscenes with Valga and Impa, as well as how Lana's weapon changed. But that's not the case here. What might happen is that certain characters are the ones you play with on these stages the first time, but anyone can be used once you return. The cutscenes only take into account the clothes your character is wearing, and if it's someone else, or even if you use a different weapon, then it uses the stock scene. The scene with Ruto in the Features trailer also gives us our first look at what appears to be the Water Temple section of the Lake Hylia map. According to the translation, Sia-twisting dimensions caused everything surrounding the lake to freeze, as we can see with the Water Temple. What's interesting though is that during the story, Sheik and Impa come face to face with a hostile Zelda that's commanding enemy forces. From a screenshot, we see Sheik identify this Zelda as a fake thanks to the Lens of Truth, though we're not sure if it'll be able to be used in regular gameplay or if it's only meant for a cutscene. Either way, the scans don't reveal the true identity of this Zelda fake, but it seems that the characters will end up fighting one another throughout the game due to various circumstances. That includes Midna, of course, but while the trailer itself provides few new details on her, we do get to see what her shackle weapon looks like. What's strange is that it's hard to make out exactly how it's a shackle. However, many of you guys noted before that the shackles could be a reference to her being stuck in her imp form. Perhaps another weapon will actually have her run around in her more human form. The rest of the characters only get a few scant seconds with hardly anything of note, though we do see that one of Xanth's abilities is growing huge in size to stomp his enemies. What's more curious is the fact that one of Sia's portals is behind him. We have no idea what this could indicate, but maybe the villains are able to use these portals to travel from one place to another. We also see a few of Girahim's attacks, including his ability to send out multiple knives, quickly teleporting around the battlefield, and even transforming his sword into a bigger form to do more damage. A little later on in the trailer, we also get some new footage of Hyrule Warriors' take on Goma, as well as Argarok and the Imprisoned. However, hidden in with these characters is an unrevealed enemy that doesn't quite look like any previous Zelda bosses. The closest one we could place it to was Baronade from Ocarina of Time, though this enemy has actual mouths with which to fight. We can't help but notice though how bosses seem to come in two varieties. Either they're huge monsters with more predictable patterns, or they're human-like with their attacks looking similar to how the hero characters play. This just seems to grant more evidence that the villains will be playable in another mode. Okay, that's everything about the characters, but there is also a little more shown about the story, specifically a cutscene that shows Sia's successful spell that brings all of these Zelda worlds together. It looks to be a huge blast of energy that first pulls Skyloft out of the sky, then Death Mountain appears where there was once a desert. The scene shifts to show Link, Lana, Impa, and Sheik watching all this happen, but why is Sheik there at all? The Zelda of Hyrule Warriors has already shown that she can fight without turning into the Sheikah, so that should be the one from Ocarina of Time. Or is there something more to this Sheik? The final shot of this cutscene shows Skyloft hovering above, Death Mountain in the background, Hyrule Castle in the center surrounded by a field and forests, and finally a desert in the foreground. Each one of these places represents one of the other games as well as Hyrule Warriors itself. Skyloft and Death Mountain are areas from Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time respectively, but a desert has never been shown for a Twilight Princess level. Only the Twilight Lands and the Palace of Twilight. Could another Twilight Princess area in the game be the Gerudo Desert? After all, there are traces of the Twilight essence floating around it. We also get a clearer idea of how the menus, shops, and extra features will work in Hyrule Warriors. First up are the weapon bags that sometimes appear from fallen enemies. According to the translations, the obtained weapons are completely random, and you won't know how good the weapon is until you clear the stage. However, there are also sealed weapons that can be found in treasure chests. These sealed weapons actually increase the amount of weapon types that a character can use. Of course, the idea of a random weapon being found seems a little strange when you compare the limited amount we've seen so far. So either there are a lot more weapons than we've been shown, or each weapon you find will have slightly different stats. This would explain how the sealed weapons can increase the amount of weapon types. In Link's case, he would start out with the sword and shield and only find variations of it until he unlocked the magic rod. Then he would start finding variations of that as well. This seems to be the case as the scans also showed off the weapon information screen. This screen shows off the weapon's names, its rarity measured in stars, more stars mean a rarer weapon, its elemental attribute, and its attack power. There are also skills that each weapon could have. One skill is the weapon's natural abilities, such as increasing the amount of dropped rupees. It also has a sealed skill where a task must be fulfilled in order to unlock. An example of one of these tasks would be killing 3,000 enemies with the weapon. Finally, there are empty skill slots which you can fill thanks to the junk shop. All told, weapons can have a maximum of 8 skills. The junk shop is a part of the bazaar that you can visit in between stages. In it, you can create stronger weapons by exchanging skills. You can either carry over skills to a stronger weapon, or take a stronger skill to your preferred weapon. It's designed to give the player a lot of freedom, though there are limits. Taking the skills from a weapon will leave it powerless and convert it into material so it can never be used again. There are also multiple skill groups and only so many of a single group can be attached to any one weapon. Otherwise, it's completely up to the player. We get a slightly better look at this during the NicoNico livestream as we can see the elements associated with each character. As stated by the scan, the 5 elements are fire, lightning, water, light, and darkness. The advantage to using these elements is that they'll do more damage to enemies that are weak to them. The weapons options can be seen after selecting the Deku Staff. Listed below seem to be several of the different staves that Lana has on hand, including the one that she's currently using. The stream showed off more than just the weapons though. We got to see the full cast list so far, an update from what we saw at E3. But there's still enough room for 4 more characters without completely blocking the character portraits on the side. If the game does decide to block those portraits, then there would be enough room for 13 more characters in total. We can't see that happening though, as it would detract from the clean interface. Continuing on, the level selection screen has a few more details. There are check marks over both the gold Skulltula symbol for Hyrule Field, as well as the difficulty level, so the game will keep track of whether you found all the Skulltulas in a level, and what difficulty you've completed each level on. It allows players to quickly sift through what they need to do. This also shows the order of levels in the game. It begins with the Hyrule Fields as we thought, before moving on to what could be the Elden Caves, and then another cave area that we didn't quite recognize. This seems to be the chase to stop Sia, as the next level is the Lanayru Gorge where we've seen Sia use her portal. Because of her success, it seems the stage selection then splits into 3 paths. The top path is the Ocarina of Time levels, the middle is Twilight Princess, and the bottom is Skyward Sword. Perhaps, from that point on, the stages can be chosen in any order the player wants, but all 3 paths must be completed when they begin to recombine. It might even be that each of the characters from the Hyrule Warriors timeline is sent to one of the others. That way it makes sense that each of these levels are happening at the same time, at least for the first time these levels are played. We even see evidence of that with Impa appearing on Death Mountain with Sheik, Lana interacting with Agatha and Midna, and Link having that cutscene with Fi. After the stage is selected, a thumbs up symbol is shown next to the recommended weapon for that character, so it looks like enemies in the Twilight Fields are weak to water. Before the stage actually begins, there are more options for the player that we're not exactly sure what they do. At the very least, we know that there will be a lengthy time limit for each stage, and the map will be shown beforehand to help with planning. In the case of Twilight Fields, some areas are blacked out, as that is where the Twilight Realm is taken over. As Lana explores these areas though, the map will be filled out. But the most curious part of the entire features trailer is the original Legend of Zelda map. There's no information about this part of the game outside of what we can observe ourselves, so we could be way off base, though we think we have at least some grasp on what it does. Mainly, it seems that by completing missions you unlock the means to obtain new items such as a piece of heart. The map itself seems to show either what items can be found in a particular area, or maybe what items are needed in order to unlock something else. Some of the items we can see include the candle, the bomb, the compass, and the power bracelet. At the top right, there looks to be an item list showing which and how many of each item you have. The map itself is divided into colored sections, though there's no indication what these sections could mean. A nice touch is that the hidden portions of the map clearly show the paths that can be taken thanks to barriers showing inaccessible paths and dead ends. In the top left corner of the screen, it has several boxes that say A rank victory, battle victory, and treasure. These are blank while Link is on the starting space, but if he moves north, the treasure space shows that he's already found a piece of heart here. However, under A rank victory, it shows a question mark along with an 8-bit version of Impa's head. Above this, it says requires search. So it looks like attaining an A rank victory will unlock the item necessary to find another secret. It's possible that some squares could hold multiple secrets. Moving on to the next square, both the A rank victory and treasure are blank while the battle victory shows a bomb. Maybe Link was rewarded a bomb item for completing this square's challenge. Battle victories could directly relate to all the sword icons scattered across the map. Each of these squares can be zoomed into to show a recreation of that portion of the original game's map. However, it doesn't appear that you'll have direct control of Link. In none of these scenes do we see him actually move. Instead, he walks in place, which is something he never did in the original. It looks like you automatically check various places using the items you've unlocked. While using the candle and the bomb, the bush and the wall sparkle before the respective item is used on it. So unlike the original Zelda, it looks like the secrets will be explicitly laid out. And these secrets will remain unearthed as we can see a revealed staircase in an enjoyed part of the map. A nice touch though is that the parts that haven't been unveiled yet are still covered in darkness. Finally, there's a scene that shows 2 Dodongos on the map. Since there doesn't seem to be any direct control, it seems that you can't directly battle these two. Instead, a button shows that you have to actually initiate a battle. This battle seems to have already been completed as a gold A medal is placed next to the challenge. The menu even provides tips on which element the enemies will be weak to, though that doesn't apply in Dodongo's case. What this likely all means is that once the challenge is started, the actual battle will take place on one of the maps. The Legend of Zelda map is essentially a slightly more involved challenge mode with various rewards to unlock. Okay, we're almost done here, but there's one last thing to mention. The last scene of the features trailer shows Lana accidentally summoning a horde of cuckoos before being chased away. It's a funny scene and it's great to see the cuckoos involved, but did you notice exactly what her portal was? Looking closely, it's actually a smaller version of the Gate of Time from Skyward Sword. Maybe Lana was trying to use it to bring someone to her, or as a way to go somewhere before the cuckoos interrupted. It's a great little detail that shows how deep they're digging into the lore, as well as have a little fun with it. But that's everything we could find in the Hyrule Warriors Features trailer, as well as the many instances of side material. With the Japanese release so close, this might be the last time we get so much information. It looks like a perfect blend of Dynasty Warriors action with Zelda's exploration and memorable characters. Of course, if we missed something in this massive analysis, please let us know in the comments. If you liked this video, be sure to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at GameXplain. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Hyrule Warriors and other things gaming too.